course, Joe Biden, in the first 100 days of his presidency, is suggesting that all signatories to the Paris Accord would have to turn up to the White House or send a representative, up their commitments most likely to net zero by 2050. We don't know where the federal government's going to end up on this. My bet is that there'll be some people advising some people that, well, this is a never-never target, so there's 3 elections between now and 2030. We've got a target for 2030, see what happens. But what do you think about this, Craig, about the mark that's going to be out there, which is, unless Australia is marching, ironically, now we must march to the tune of the United States. Yes. If we wanted to march to Trump's tune, that was terrible, but now we must adhere to the American tune. How big a game changer is Biden wanting to take more public ownership of things like net zero 2050?
It will be important, Paul, but always remember, China has no commitment to 2030. So China under Paris is able to continue to increase their emissions as much as they like, and they said when they get to 2030 they'll sort of pause them, sort of thing. And maybe after everyone else has got to net zero in 2050, they might do it in 2060. This is, Paul, we can't go down the track. We see how hostile China is to us just on trade today. We've seen the interference with what they're doing in the embassies around the world. We see what they're doing in the South China Sea. To hand this international competitive advantage to China is absolutely, I think, criminal. Now, if anyone wants to argue also the 2050 case for net zero, everyone gets on board and isn't it wonderful? Let them explain the detail. Let them say, what are you going to do to agriculture? How are you going to get an agriculture? How many of the cattle herd are you going to cull? How are you going to do it in gas for home heating? So you're going to say people can't have gas at home to cook with? Are you going to take everyone's tractor off them? How are you going to run all these tractors and trucks on electric batteries? How are you going to do it? Let someone set out how it's going to do, work out the cost, and then say whether it's worthwhile, other than just this airy-fairy sort of, net zero 2050 without a clue of what it means.
To give you an idea about 2050, Greta Thunberg will be 47 years of age, and then when China gets to net zero, she'll be 57 years of age, about where it goes. But again, Gideon, this is going to be a big part of the Biden presidency, and it's going to create its own politics here in Australia. What do you think we have to do if, we're going to make our way towards 20 targets, which we're going to meet, 2030 targets, which most likely will meet, about promises about 2050?
Well, you're right. This will be a feature of the rhetoric of the Biden presidency. I'm not sure how much he can get done if he doesn't win the Senate. He might do it by executive order, I suppose. But look, I'm not surprised to see CEOs calling for climate leadership, looking all benevolent and so on. These are the same people who for years have been coming out saying, "Oh, we need certainty in the energy market. We need an energy plan to drive certainty." Not mentioning, for example, the renewable energy grants that align the pockets of executives of the renewable energies racket, not mentioning the projects that banks will be lending to completely underwritten by the government, not mentioning the cottage industries that will be created like carbon accounting and carbon trading and things like that, not mentioning all the compliance work that big law firms will get. The bottom line is Australian people aren't stupid. Joe Biden could turn back the rising oceans with his bare hands and Australians still wouldn't vote for the kind of climate action that is being suggested by the political and cultural elites of this country. They have voted against it every single time because they know that it will make them poorer, while the privileged elite who is driving this garbage will only get richer.
All right, Joe, how do you feel about how Australia's going to either have to pivot, but to be honest, if you've already got a promise for 2030 and we have 3-year election cycles, that seems to be a fairly definite target we're working towards. But of course, the politics is that we, must be in lockstep with things like the United States. But again, I thought that the Gretas of this world thought we're rooted in 11 years from now.
Well, Paul, if Joe Biden loses the 2 special elections in Georgia, for the Senate on the 5th of January, then he definitely won't have control of the US Senate. And that means that he won't be able to get his more left-wing agenda through the Congress. Therefore, combined with more centrist and centre-right type of nominees, combined with the fact that he can't deliver higher taxes and more punitive measures in relation to the environment, he will have to have a centre-right agenda domestically in the United States, and he will overcompensate with a more left-wing agenda internationally. And that more left-wing agenda will include being far more aggressive than even he's already saying in relation to climate change. It will mean that he'll be prosecuting human rights in China, which will infuriate the Chinese and, in my view, cause the relationship to deteriorate even more substantially between the US and China. And there are a number of areas where he will inadvertently put pressure on Australia, and one of those will be climate change. There's no doubt in my mind. It's the one area where there might be some unity between China and the United States, but certainly Joe Biden will use a much more aggressive position on climate change to bring Europe back to the centre of attention, which is exactly what the Europeans want as well. And finally, I'll just say this on climate change. For governments, the horse is bolted. I mean, really, I mean, I've seen it in business in the United States. I see it around the world. Institutional money, vast amount of private sector capital that is swirling around the world at the moment is backing climate change and climate change initiatives. And it doesn't matter in some ways what governments do. There is going to be the march of the private sector backed by innovation that is going to deal with climate change whether people like it or not.